Welcome back to the backdrop. Today's guest has spent more than 2 decades helping organizations grow through strategy, transformation, and the power of strong partnerships. Having built a career across Canada, the UAE, and the wider GCC, he's held senior leadership positions with organizations including Accenture, the Executive Council of Dubai, and Meydan Group, where he helped shape strategy across government, real estate, hospitality, and major commercial portfolios. Today, as Chief Development Officer of THA by Armonia, he's led the company's commercial growth, strategic partnerships, and business development, helping position one of the region's leading staffing and events organizations for its next phase of expansion. This week on the backdrop, we're joined by Chief Development Officer of THA by Armonia, Shams Moloo. Shams, thank you for joining us. Really glad to have you here. Shams, Chief Development Officer with THA by Armonia. And I know that we are really centered on events on the show. THA is very much centered on the events industry and the workforce and talent for the events industry. But I think a lot of what we're going to discuss right now and a lot of your background really is core strategy development, strategic development for groups, and that's been, your wheelhouse for a long time, your past. So, thanks for joining us and give us a little bit of a background on yourself.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Background of myself, I've been in Dubai for the last 17 years. So early days, pre-financial crisis, pre-COVID, and so I've sort of been witness to a lot of the transformation that has happened in the region. Haven't really been involved in the events world until about 5 years ago. I worked for 7 years with the Executive Council. Thereafter was working with strategy at Meydan Group, um, and then began my journey with THA. And it's been an amazing journey. It's seen sort of a shift in terms of the business. We've seen obviously the arrival of Armonia as our primary shareholder, uh, and um, and we see a lot of growth within a number of different segments. So it hasn't just been the events world. I mean, we operate in the luxury retail industry.
That's
We
right.
work with luxury brands, and the essence of what we do is really putting the right people in the right roles. And we understand the importance of people within a number of different industries. So finding the right people, building strong relationships with our client group, is what has contributed to our success.
Amazing. And I know that you have spent the lion's share of your career and coming from Canada. So nice to have another Canadian on the show, our first Canadian.
First connect.
Um, so you spent an entire career helping companies shape and perform better. Um, I mean, what do you it could be this region or just in general? What kind of sort of what are the sort of the lies they tell themselves where they feel that they're underperforming but not being honest about it?
Well, I think strategy is something that's often a word that's misused, right? I mean, we see, when you go through people's websites or brochures or company profiles, you see these aspirational visions and missions, and there's often a disconnect between what those visions say and what they're doing. And I think, if we're talking about, what are the misconceptions or what are the lies that organizations tell them, I think it's really that a clear strategy exists. And it's not to say that strategies don't evolve. I mean, strategies have to continuously evolve, but
Mm.
I think understanding an organization's vision is key. Because if you don't know what your vision is or what your mission is as a company,
Yeah.
then it's very difficult to get everybody within your company aligned to that vision. And it emphasizes the importance that people play within organizations. I don't know if you've read the book Good to Great, but there's this concept of having the right people on the bus. And you need not have, a very clearly defined destination, but as long as you have a direction, or as long as you have a vision in mind, once you have those right people on the bus, then those people will help guide your strategy. It'll help guide the path to take towards your vision and your mission. So I would say from a strategic perspective, I couldn't sort of emphasize enough the importance for organizations to sort of understand what they want to achieve in 5 years, in 10 years. The details of how they will traverse the current times may change and has to change. But that vision, that mission needs to be propagated throughout that organization. Whether you talk to your sales team, whether you talk to your recruitment, your HR, your finance, your operations teams, there should be a consistent understanding of where the company is heading, so that they can too ensure that their work is driving towards that vision.
So when you came into THA, and because of the way you think and your mindset, and you come in, you observe, and you probably think either align with current heuristics and procedures and policies, or I need to intervene. When you walk into a company, any company, whether it's minutes or days, what are the telltale signs that you need to intervene, or some things need to change, or are there any things that sort of catch your
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And I think for me, immediately, one of the first sort of indicators of how a company is running is by looking at the culture within that organization. You could sense, what type of dynamic exists between leadership and the people who are working for the company. Is there a clear link? Is there an open door policy? Is there a sense of camaraderie? Is there a sense of um, working together and collaboration amongst the team, or are people working in silos? Is there Are there forums where people get to voice their concerns or their ideas? That's typically a good indicator to see what type of organization is being set up. I'll give you an example. Um, I was doing some consulting work for a company here in the UAE, and the company had two separate business lines. Okay, um, the first business line that they set up was their original, their bread and butter, how they got started as a company. Um, and the second business line was kind of an offshoot. It was a trial. It was filling an immediate gap in the market. And it just so happened that the office that the company had set up was different. So they only had space for 20 people. And so they had to lease another office down the corridor, smaller, but just to accommodate the 5 people that were being set up for this new business setup. So when I walked into the office and I met with the owners of the company, they were struggling with that second company, and they said, "Well, we're not sure this company is viable. We're not sure this company has legs. Is it sustainable? Will it fulfill sort of, the cost that it's bearing on us at the moment?" And when I walked into that first office, so the original, the bread and butter company, amazing, right? Like, people are talking, there's a vibe, they're laughing, the meeting room was always full. They were brainstorming. You could see mind maps being written on the board. Leadership
beanbag
sat
chairs,
there, bean bags. It was just a
Google,
very
Facebook?
nice
Yeah.
vibe. When I walked into the second office, it was like, somebody just died.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And if you came in as I did from the outside,
Yeah.
you would say these are two very different companies,
So no joy.
almost polar opposites.
Yeah.
Where the first was buzzing, and the second was glum. It was like a rainy day,
Yeah.
in Canada. Um,
Yeah.
And so you could sense the culture of a single company, but just because of the way the teams were set up, the presence of leadership, the dynamic of the people involved was just vastly different. And so that for me was a telltale sign that we need to leverage the culture of the first setup
Yeah.
into the second. And so what we did in that particular company was merge those two entities into one to see how we can bring about a bit more positivity, a more collaborative environment, a culture of sharing, a culture of joint effort and joint objectives, and that in and of itself sort of proved wonders. So it just goes to show, I mean, you can tell a company is not going to succeed just by looking at the culture and the dynamics and the leadership involvement and the collaborative nature of the teams. Yeah.
I think you just answered the next question that I was going to have for you because I know THA by Armonia are very, very people centric. You know, they've got a strong, strong g- sort of spirit of you know, people centered philosophy.
Correct. Yeah.
And at your level, you're the one that goes in at the highest level to meet with your clients, you know, large organizations, or they're multinational or even or mid-sized groups. Um, you know, a lot of these guys at that level that you're sitting in a boardroom with, they think about, you know, quarterly performance, and they're thinking about bottom line, they're thinking about margins and things like this. How do you convince them that, you know, it's the people that's going to make all of the difference in, you know, that the talent gradient, the workforce migration within the organization, where you're going to choose people that can, they're not just going to plug a hole, but can actually flourish within the organization and help
Yeah.
solve problems.
Yeah, I mean, the decision or the assessment of people within an organization is key. I mean, if you look at the P&L of most companies, I mean, salaries are typically the highest or the most expensive line item on that P&L.
Yeah.
And so, to talk about an organization and the importance of its people mutually exclusively doesn't make sense, right? I mean, the people are the organization.
Yeah.
It's not people are not resources in an organization. They actually are the organization. So if you can sort of come to terms with understanding the importance of having the right people, then it's key. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of determining sort of the trajectory that you're on,
Yeah.
and having the right people on the team is not only a good cultural sort of norm within organizations, but it also allows you to rely on
Yeah.
that workforce. And I see a lot of, I mean, the events industry is a pretty strange one, right? Because of the cyclical nature of the industry, because of you have a lull in the calendar, typically April, May till the end of August, where the events personnel sort of disappear and go back home and wait for their calling.
It's a bit of a roller coaster.
It's a bit of a roller coaster,
Yeah.
and so
And then, of course, within that, you've got a lot of categories of specialties and expertise that
correct,
are
yeah,
completely polar opposite of each other that
yeah,
have to connect and work together.
yeah, and it's just an industry that is very different than your traditional
Yeah.
business model. And so what I'm seeing within our business is agencies are really struggling to define who to maintain on payroll
Yeah.
and who to bring in part-time, who to bring in for a seasonal perspective. And finding that right balance of who to keep as part of your core is something that a lot of agencies are sort of grappling with and
Yeah.
struggling with. And I think from my perspective and from where I sit, the event agencies that succeed in terms of finding that right balance are the ones that do well.
Yeah.
The ones that sort of shrink down to two, three people um, are the ones that struggle because they're for a number of reasons. I mean, for one, they haven't sort of developed a DNA within their organization. They're too reliant. And, maybe this is contradictory to my own business at THA, but, freelancers are great to have when you need them, but your core team needs to be strong.
Yeah.
You can't solely rely on freelancers because your DNA doesn't exist then. You don't have
Yeah.
that fingerprint of
Yeah.
the company. And, I use the example of some of the very successful event agencies. Uh, you know, the reason they're successful is because their events can be identified without even knowing who pulled off that opening ceremony,
Yeah.
who pulled off that drone show, or who pulled off, that government summit. You can tell who did it
Yeah.
by the quality,
Because they've created
by
a
the
blueprint.
creative, because they've created the blueprint.
Yeah.
And so what I'm seeing not only in the UAE but also in Saudi is there's these like mushrooms popping up of like two, three guys working in their basement and just churning out proposal after proposal and in the event that they win, then they'll reach out to a staffing agency and just build an entire team and
Or other freelancers that are
or
friends and
other
create
freelancers,
some sort of,
correct.
yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
it's a model. It
Yeah.
has it worked in the past? Yeah, it has worked, but does it create a sustainable business model? No.
It's
Uh,
also fatiguing and there's a lot of time consumption
yeah.
to try to get that 1% chance that it's gonna work out in many cases.
Correct, correct. And so I feel agencies are in this period where, given the current situation, they're having to decide,
Yeah.
how to get lean, how to contain costs, but still maintaining that DNA, still maintaining that maybe it's creative know-how, maybe it's technical competence, maybe it's, their understanding of a specific business.
Yeah.
But how do you keep that core people which defines who your company is, while still being agile to contain costs? That's
Yeah.
that's sort of what I feel the event agencies are going through at the moment.
You mentioned Saudi and of course the UAE and the entire Middle East, where we are the and I'll argue this with anyone that we are the event hub for the world. I mean, for a small region, and we are a small region, especially population wise. You know, China has an events industry. I'm sure they have sort of their own internal events that are nationalized events. America, same thing. But for an international events hub or place where we're second to none, and we are a different beast altogether. And on top of all of the different niche, fragmented specialties
Yeah.
and all the things we mentioned about the roller coaster. On top of that, we're in a region that is has undergone or has experienced a little bit of a pause with with some geopolitical issues. And with that, we've seen a lot of people come and go. We've seen people come in, they say, you know what, we're gonna go, whether they go to Saudi or whether they go to Qatar, whether they go into Europe or
Yeah.
um, where like we're not I don't know if we're facing a talent shortage because I think everyone's coming back once things start kicking off again. Is it Do you feel it's actually a leadership or an organizational design problem that we're facing this shortage now? And you feel like everything's gonna come back and full on again for
Yeah.
Q4, Q1?
Yeah, you've raised some good points. I mean, I agree with your analysis of this region being sort of the hub of events globally. And I think for the longest time we've relied on events in the region to sort of sustain the pool of event expertise that exists. What I feel is happening, at least with THA by Armonia, is that we are looking globally. We are saying, look, rather than once upon a time having the need to bring in Canadians, to bring in Americans, Australians, Brits into the region to fulfill the need of events in the region, now we've built, like we're almost acting like an incubator
Yeah.
for the events world, where we have exposure to the best and greatest events. I mean, whether it's, conferences or exhibitions or music festivals, we've done it all in this region.
Yeah.
The world is looking inwards to the region to say, we want to do what Dubai did. We want to do what Saudi did. And I think for the first time, I'm seeing the need for us to start exporting some of that talent, right? And the freelancers that have been part of the region for the last 10, 20, 30 years, who have been working on events here, are now getting opportunities to work in the US, work in the
Yeah.
UK. We have a lot of freelancers at THA who, because of their experience in Qatar, for example, at the World Cup, were approached and went to the US and went to Canada and went to Mexico to be part of the World Cup
Share their
there.
expertise.
So the world is becoming a smaller place,
Yeah.
number one. Number two is, I feel the region is getting recognized for breeding a lot of these event experts that can be exported to global events, and it's one of the reasons at THA we're looking at a separate sort of business line aimed at global events, because our philosophy is, if we've spent the last 15 years building this repository and these connections with the greatest and brightest minds from a freelance perspective, why are we limiting it to the GCC? We can actually export some of that talent. We can go to the IOC for the Olympics to say, look, we understand you're going to be delivering an Olympics in your country. We have the capability, we have the know-how, we have the experience. We can support that. And so we're seeing more and more global events sort of coming to us, looking at opportunities to leverage the capability that we've developed over the years, to drive quality, to drive excellence, to drive performance. And that's not limited to, the Olympics, but I mean, we're currently working in Belgrade at the moment, it's providing solutions for a number of different pavilions. We're talking to COP, we're
Yeah.
talking to the Olympics, we're talking to the Commonwealth Games, so I think we need to sort of take a different lens when it comes to, the view that there's a talent shortage. I think the expertise that freelancers are developing in the region, we need to broaden our horizon, right? I mean, the events industry will pick up, in the
Yeah.
region, it will pick up.
Yeah.
It's in a
It
lull.
has to.
It has to. And I always tell people that events are a catalyst for driving tourism,
Exactly,
right?
and we say this a lot. Yeah, it's not just it's tourism, it's collaboration, it's
Yeah.
partnership, it's FDI, it's
Correct.
getting if you get events in any form, concerts,
Yeah.
festivals, summits, um, large scale bilateral meetings, government diplomatic meetings, they shine a light on
Yeah.
the host.
And one of the things that really impresses me about events in the region is that um, they're very strategic. And my background is in strategy, so I love it. When a client comes to event agencies with an RFP with very clearly defined strategic objectives. I'll give you an example of the work we did in Expo 2025 last year in Osaka.
Mhm.
Um, which was, we were awarded in a partnership with another company to develop the Saudi pavilion. And when I say the Saudi pavilion, I'm talking about all the logistics, all the operations, all the events, the programming for the pavilion. But it was governed by such a strong strategy,
Yeah.
meaning that you can't just blow things up in the sky. right?
No.
It's not about wow moments. It's not about, just showcasing how much money we have. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
They were very clear. We want to drive foreign direct investment. We want to drive inbound tourism. We want to break stigma of women in the kingdom. We want to showcase the different terrains in Saudi. They were very clear
Yeah.
about what events needed
Messaging.
to be,
Yeah.
and that's a stark contrast to what events were 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
20 years ago, I mean, it was about how many fireworks you could blow up in the sky,
Yeah.
and which Guinness World Record you wanted to break.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, events are serving as a catalyst
Yeah.
for showcasing the country, showcasing the stability, showcasing the different sort of attractions of a city.
Yeah.
And I know other guests on your podcast have talked about, how, cycling events, as an example, are used to showcase some of these locations and some of
The
these
efficiency of the infrastructure, and I think it was, the last one was Andy Fordham, who was a specialist
uh,
in endurance, and, he made a good point that if we didn't have the Dubai Metro, and not just that, a very efficient, clean, you know, perfect metro system
right.
in Dubai, how would you get 300,000 people to a race in and out?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
not many cities can boast that.
Yeah. So I think the back to your question, I mean, talent shortage, I don't think so. I think there will be events and there will be people to fill certain roles. The region has always been a destination loved by foreigners, by the locals, to visit,
Yeah.
to work in. It's a feather in a lot of people's caps when they work on an event, whether it's a desert festival or a music festival or a
Yeah.
conference or an exhibition. So the scale of events that happen in the region are just so attractive to people that there will be a demand to
And
fill those.
you know what I've seen, and you made a good point about that, about how we went from being showy and fireworks and all of that to actually meaning something, where the substance has now overtaken. The style is always going to be there,
Yeah.
especially in this region, but the substance has really taken a front seat, and now when people are leaving an event, and the events that are created, the new events that are taking place are actually designed to mean something, that where there's actionable items afterwards. There's takeaways, like there's collaboration, or there is some, at least some substance to create policy prescription.
Absolutely.
And these are now becoming more important than just wow,
Correct.
the wow is always gonna be there, but again, it's now it means something,
Yeah.
and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
I I personally, I don't enjoy getting involved in, maybe because I've been doing it for a while, I don't enjoy being involved in veneer events. I really love when it means something, and it means that for months afterwards, it starts the ball rolling
Yeah.
on new, the implementation or integration of something, or
Yeah.
collaboration, or you're involved in something and Japan and Estonia decide they're going to collaborate on
Yeah.
some, new solution for, water sustainability or
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah.
just as an
Yeah.
example. So I think that's where we are now.
Yeah,
I
and
think
and you look at some of the events that have been curated and conceptualized in the region, and take GITEX for example. I mean, that was a Dubai baby.
yeah,
It was IP that was homegrown, and you look now. I mean, they have GITEX in Morocco, they have GITEX in Kenya, they have so they've started taking a lot of that expertise and that know-how and that intellectual property, and they've started looking at it as a catalyst, not only for growing the market in Dubai,
yeah,
but governments are looking at those events as a means of sparking tourism within their own jurisdictions, right? So I think events is almost there's a misconception about events
Yeah.
that, as you said, I mean, they're becoming strategic tools
Yeah.
to drive agendas, to drive policies, to drive initiative within other jurisdictions. And if we can continue sort of looking at events as strategic tools, then I mean, opportunities are endless, right?
When I started working in my early 20s, I remember having this small job at this small shop somewhere, and the owner would come in, and he always said to me, and this stuck with me forever, "You can't just maintain a company. You always have to try to promote it, try to market it, try to find new ways
Correct.
of whether it's sort of some liminal exercise where you're trying to expand into different, but you never just sit and maintain." And we were talking about GITEX. I mean, that's sort of the Trixie Lowe zeitgeist, you know? I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with Trixie many years ago when I created some programs for GITEX early on. Some stick around, some
And
don't, but in terms of the programs they maintain or they don't. But I mean, it was incredible to watch it from the trade center perspective, seeing how they work, and it is a machine, and it's really one of those getting approvals, "Walk with me," you know, you feel like you're on Wall Street or something, and
yeah,
it's really, it's quite amazing to see, and back to the point about not just maintaining, about promoting and expanding and amplifying and trying to create a beast, and that's what they've done, and of course, that's what, Trixie and her team have done, is they saw the opportunity and created something incredible, and that's, really amazing, and it's a great, great representation of Dubai and the UAE, that they're everywhere now,
yeah,
so
yeah, and you see similar models being adopted in the kingdom. I mean, you
yeah,
look at FII, for example.
yeah,
That's become, Davos in the desert. It's
yeah,
become a forum which is attended by, the senior most delegates from around the world.
yeah.
And it started off as just an event, an idea, and it's turned into
And a
something that
nation building
serves
exercise.
correct. And it is nation building. It
Yeah,
is a forum where
yeah,
ideas are shared. And you were
yeah,
mentioning this the other day that events need to be more than just wow elements. They need
yeah.
to be
And
strategic
now they're
drivers.
ubiquitous. Now
Correct.
giant
And
tech is everywhere.
and now imagine, companies who are looking at, driving additional investment, sparking tourism, they can reach out to FII to say, look, we would love to host you in our country. I mean, these were you go back to the FIFA days or the Olympic days. I mean, why were these tournaments set up? It was not only to promote a sport,
Yeah.
it was to drive nation building. And you look at, some unsuccessful, of course, but a lot of the countries and why they spend so much money sort of bidding for these high profile sporting tournaments
Yeah.
is not to showcase football. It's to spark, to put them on the map,
Yeah.
to drive, job creation.
Yeah.
It's to drive, the agendas of countries as a whole. So if you look at events in that angle and with that light, I mean, all of
Mhm.
a sudden events are very important, and given the geopolitical situation that we're in, you have to start thinking about what are the levers that the government has today
Mhm.
to regain confidence, to regain that tourism push, you know. And events is probably, in my opinion, top of the list.
Yeah.
So all of those freelancers, all of those event experts who are wondering, will Dubai ever get back to what it was? It has to.
Yeah.
I mean, events will be the catalyst for sparking a rebound.
Yeah.
It has to happen. There has to be a push, and there will be a push from the senior most people in the leadership positions
Yeah,
within the
it's the
UAE.
center of the web.
Right.
Because it not only creates, we said it creates opportunities for partnerships and collaborations that get on the map, but it also creates ideas for manufacturing, for, a lot of these ideas. And I know that many, many years ago, there was, there was a lot of the economic vision for the government, whether it's Abu Dhabi or Dubai. A lot of this stemmed from a lot of what they saw from outside Singapore and young countries like that, and how they're doing so well, and then they've implemented it as pillars within the vision of the government here and how they're going to go forward. So this is how these ideas that stem from conversations being had at these events, at summits and conferences and all
Yeah.
these, they create new plans, and that helps to grow the region. It helps to grow industry here as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and there's a stark difference between, the UAE and the KSA, right? I
yeah,
mean, the from a population perspective, you have what, like 11 million versus 35 million. Um, so the kingdom is in a bit of a different position because the reliance on tourism doesn't really exist. Okay, they can host events, and have enough people attend from within Saudi Arabia. The UAE is a different story,
yeah,
right? The UAE relies on tourism.
yeah.
And so to all of the people who come to me and say, Shams, look, I'm debating whether to go to Saudi or whether to stay in the UAE, given the situation. I'm always like, both are good options
Yeah.
because in Saudi, you don't have this reliance on tourism. There
We
will be
couldn't get a
events.
tourism visa until a few years ago.
Right, right. So there is this push to create sort of an environment of expat, and ease of entry and ease of doing business in Saudi, as we've seen over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The UAE, I think, will see a massive push when it comes to events. So I think it's just a matter of time before we see the event season really kick off, and I think it'll be soon. I think
Yeah,
it'll
yeah, and I
be in
think
the
it's
next
gonna
few
be
months.
I think it's gonna be overwhelming. I think
I
it's gonna
agree.
be
I
something.
agree.
So we talk about government, and I know that the THA and yourself, I mean, you worked in private sector and public sector. You've had to um, attempt to develop and transform different, you know, public sector thinking and private sector thinking. Which one? I know they're both completely different, but which one did you find more difficult to get to the table to try to adapt to the ideas that you've had?
Oh, very different. In the public sector, um, things are slow. Slow in the sense they're slow to start. Um, but in the public sector, while they are slow to start because of all of the buy-in, because of the lobbying, because of the process of taking things from policy through to legislation, it takes time.
Yeah.
But the advantage of working in the public sector is that despite it being a slow start, there's institutional catalysts that will see it through to completion, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's quite the opposite of the private sector. In the private sector, it's very easy to start. Everybody wants to start working in a different direction. People want to spark change. Oh, there's a need to do this. Let's quickly go into that. But sustaining that urgency, sustaining or continuing that effort long term is more difficult. So it's almost like a complete opposite. Public sector is slow to start, but you have institutional drivers in play to continue that momentum. And the private sector, I would say, is quick to start, but it's harder to sustain because things change and you have to be willing to adapt and you have to be agile and you have to sort of go after the need of the hour and you have to go and fix or put out the fire that started in the back office. And so very different.
Yeah.
From my experience when I worked in the public sector, it was very difficult to see the outcomes because the initiatives that we started in the public sector were so strategic. I'll give you an example. When we developed the Dubai Plan 2021, we looked at um, strategic objectives. Okay, things like increasing the happiness of
Oh, yes.
Dubai citizens, or easing traffic in Dubai, or that's not something you can just like easily measure or work on a presentation and roll it out and see it sort of completed in a week or 2 weeks. these are long-term goals, right? So the gratification of the work that you're doing wasn't immediate. Whereas in the private sector, and the work I did at Meydan was semi-government, but it
Yeah.
gave me a flavor of almost seeing a bit of that gratification. So we would work on the conceptual or the schematic design of a hotel, and then 6 months later you'd see a structure, and for the first time I was like, you know what, I was involved in that because I can see it. It's tangible. It's bricks and mortar. I can see the building go up. And so that's really what I think is the major difference between working in the public and private is that public, it takes time to see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
And in the private, you can see it pretty quickly. And both are gratifying. It's just one requires a bit more patience than me.
Amazing. Well, I want to ask you one last question is that, and that question is, um, what do you, if you asked yourself in 10 years, or somebody asked you in 10 years, what would be the most proud part of your career, like of the change that you've created in your career? And it could be something that you're hoping will happen, or something you're striving for that you are determined to happen, or something that you can't beat. It's already happened.
Yeah. So I would say the change that I made in the people I worked with.
Yeah.
Um, I see a lot of people who are very task driven, who are very, um, they look at their job description and they say, okay, this is what I do. And what I always try to do with everybody I work with is look at an organization or look at a role as solutions oriented. When I oversee the entire business development function at THA and head sales across the region and globally. Um, but one of my approaches and strategies of success is looking at finding solutions for clients rather than saying, what sort of staffing do you need? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I try to impart that mentality or that approach with my sales team, whether it's in the UAE, whether it's in Saudi, that you have to go to clients looking to solve their problems, right? Or
Right.
looking to come up with a solution that will help them. um, I always tell people, there's three things that will make you a good salesperson. One is your clients have to like you.
Mhm.
Now, if they don't like you, I don't think they're going to give you work,
Yeah.
right? So
So
you have to
congeniality is a big.
you have to figure out how to be likable.
Yeah.
Um, the second is you have to become an expert in your field. Because if your client thinks that they are smarter than you within a staffing mindset, then they don't need you, right?
Yeah.
So if they have more freelancers, if they have a larger network than you, if they know operational planning, or if they know um, more about staffing than a staffing agency, then there's no need for you. And the third is what I call the reciprocity norm. Okay. And what that refers to is look for ways to help your client. Put aside the financial benefit, put aside a quote, put aside an invoice, put aside all of that. If Michael is facing a problem and I can help solve his problem, whether it's through staffing or any other means, if Michael is struggling to get in to a particular client group in Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
and I have a very good network in Saudi Arabia. And if I can help Michael put him in front of the right people at this ministry in Saudi, that's a good thing. And I
Yeah.
encourage my team always to look for ways to help because
It
when
also comes
Michael,
with them trusting you.
correct. And,
Yeah.
and, people use the word partnership loosely, I feel, in the region. Oh, we want a partnership agreement. We're partners,
Mm.
what I try to impart with my team is that, live by that value. that live by the value that you truly want to be solutions driven. You want to help Michael get into this client group, and if you can do that, you will build a relationship, and that relationship will bear fruit, or it might not bear fruit. But I know that when Michael is working with the Ministry of Sport in Saudi Arabia, and he's now traversed up the ladder, and he's now a project director, and he now needs staffing solutions, there's a good chance that Michael is going to give me a call because we are working together. We are partners. Um, and so, to your question, I think 10 years from now, I hope I can look back and see some of those, nuggets of wisdom that hopefully have stuck. That would make me proud.
And put into practice for
Put
people
into
to make that
practice. Yeah,
success.
because, that's not numbers. That's not, that compounds,
Yeah.
because hopefully they too
And they
know.
share it. They
Correct.
imparted
And
them.
that's what I mean. I mean, and everybody talks about legacy, and everybody talks about, what do you want to be known for? And, for me, it's about the change that I brought in people that
Yeah.
they then impart on the next generation of the worker. So
That's a
that's
good
my goal.
that's a good path to take.
Hopefully we'll see that happen.
At the airing of this episode, we'll be, I think, a day or two away from MEES. Is that correct? Middle East event show,
Right.
where you are going to be one of the speakers. You're going to be on
Correct.
stage. So we wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you so much.
And we want to thank you so much, Shams, for being part of this. Really, really
It's
great
been a pleasure.
conversation. I really enjoyed it. And we hope that we can have you back another time. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Thank you, Mike.
best of luck in the rest of
Thank you.
Q3, Q4 for
Thank you.
THA by Armonia.
Thank you very much. It's
Take
been
care.
a pleasure. Thanks.
Bye.